Welcome. This is Between the Lines. This is the IRC's newest series featuring conversations with authors that inspire and inform us. My name is Daniel Jacobs. I am the chef owner of DanDan and EsterEv restaurants in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I have the true pleasure and honor of having conversations today with Will Guidara. Will, formerly of Make It Nice Hospitality, which owned a little known restaurant called 11 Madison Park, the food and beverage departments at the Nomad Hotels in Los Angeles, Las Vegas, New York, and London, Brooks and Davies at the Claridge's, and Made Nice. Not only did he do all of this, but he also somehow found time to co-found the Welcome Conference and the IRC. Thank you very much for that, by the way. It's remarkable what you've been able to do, or what you've done at 11 Madison Park, especially through your focus on hospitality, 7 Beard Awards, 3 Michelin stars, and in 2017, #1 restaurant in the world by San Pellegrino. I just want to welcome you. Thanks for taking the time.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, man. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I'm excited for the conversation.
You know, today's a huge day. Today's the dropping of the new book, Unreasonable Hospitality, the remarkable power of giving people more than they expect. This book is it's got so many things in there, so many great stories. But, you know, to give the audience a little bit of context, I've been able to read the book over the last couple of weeks. And the book just has essential lessons in hospitality for our industry, but for so many other industries. You know, our economy is so service-based that this book translates to so many different industries. You know, the book details the radical reinvention of the front of the house and the back of the house at 11 Madison Park being fused into one cohesive team with just one goal, and that was, you know, to deliver the best guest experience. With the addition of the over-the-top hospitality, creating some of these one-of-a-kind experiences that, you know, I don't think any of us had ever seen before. You guys did them at 11 Madison Park. It was truly inspiring. I have bosses that have talked about it. I mean, this was stuff that nobody had done, whether it was taking a family who had never seen snow out on a sleigh trip in Central Park, or filling your PDR with sand just so that, you know, a couple could experience a little bit of the trip that they weren't going to be able to go on. I mean, it's nuts. It's stuff that nobody's done. But, you know, you also share how the hospitality doesn't just stop there. And, you know, it doesn't end in the dining room, but also translates beyond to our teams. You know, teaching them and having them learn to deliver praise and criticism with intention. And intention is such a prevailing part of this book. I really want to touch on that a little bit later. But, you know, you also hit something that, like, I think really, you know, hit me real hard. And that's sometimes the answers to some of our biggest questions in restaurants is to give more and not less. And I think one of the most beautiful things is to see a bus or a porter begin to think like a boss. And I mean, it really is. The book is really fabulous.
Thank you. Hey, man, I just want to say real quick, because it's funny, you know, you spend like so long working on a book, right? It's not dissimilar to a restaurant, except that when you're working on a restaurant, you're doing it generally with a bunch of people around the table, right? So it's a group exercise for a long time. And there are, in writing a book, you know, a couple people around the table, but it's a much more solitary experience. And you almost forget at a certain point when you're writing it that eventually people will read it. and so it's really fun to have it out in the world. And I just want to say thank you for the kind words. They mean a lot, sincerely.
You're welcome, and you deserve all of them. You know, I think my first question for you is, you know, why write this book now? Why is it so important right now?
So I think there's 2 answers to that. The first is like logistical, like why did it happen when it happened? And the second is why do I think that the lessons in it are more relevant now, perhaps, than ever before. You know, I've wanted to write a book for a while. I've been really lucky. I've been lucky to have gotten to work for and alongside some pretty remarkable people, whether it was coming up and working with my dad or learning from Wolfgang Puck and Daniel Boulud, and then like the amazing mentorship I received from Danny Meyer and Randy Garudi at Tabla, all these people. And through all these experiences, I've gotten to learn like a lot of really amazing lessons that have made me a much better leader, a much better person, a much better friend. And listen, one of the things that I think is cool when you acknowledge, like when you fully recognize the idea that restaurants are about relationships, and relationships, like the lessons that guide you to be good at relationships at work, they're the same ones that apply to life. And so for a long time, I thought I had kind of an opportunity or a responsibility to just share the stuff I've learned from all these amazing people in one place. But the timing kind of never felt right. And I think we all have the silver linings within the adversity of COVID. And one of mine was saying, okay, I finally feel like I have the grace and the space to put all this down into words, right? To try to like put intention to intuition and to articulate all these things that have been kind of dancing into my head for so long. And it was necessary for me then. It wasn't just because I had time, but you know, I just sold my company and then COVID started. We were in the IRC stuff and we were doing all this stuff. And I was trying to like find some perspective on where I wanted to go. And sometimes the best way to figure out where to go next is to take some time to look back. And so it was not only documenting the lessons, but also kind of reliving my journey kind of simultaneously. Why do I think the lessons are most relevant now? Okay, from a global perspective, I think if the pandemic robbed us all of one thing collectively, different people suffered in different ways, right? Some people lost people they loved, a lot of people lost money, but a lot of people had different experiences, but where we're all struggling was in the absence of connection. One of the things that I talk about in the book is that in restaurants, I've come to believe that the food, the service, and the design are simply ingredients in the recipe of human connection. I believe that the great restaurants, not all restaurants, are ones that have figured out how to create the conditions where people can connect. Where me as the person serving you, that through intention, through foresight, through like really trying super hard, that I can create a meaningful connection with the people I'm serving and also create an environment where if you and I were to go to that restaurant, we were going to be closer when we leave than we were when we walked in. I think that for so long, and I put myself on this list as a restaurateur, I've been trying to learn from other industries. What are they doing that I can use to make my restaurant better or to grow a better company culture? And I think this is a moment in time where I do think the world at large can stand to learn a few things from what we do.
I agree. I mean, I always said the pandemic was our greatest opportunity to affect change within the restaurant industry. And I always felt that if we don't or didn't, we failed, like on a grand scale. You talked a bit about your mentors. Your early experience was with Danny Meyer with the Culture Thrive on Hospitality. But then your dad's background was completely different. It was like this corporate restaurant environment where things were, kind of dropped from above and you were told what to do below. Why do you feel like it's so important to bridge the gap between being just, being restaurant smart, but also being corporate smart at the same time?
Yeah, so those are my dad. That's my dad's language. He would always say restaurant smart, corporate dumb, restaurant dumb, corporate smart. And like, the whole idea is articulating kind of where are the decisions being made? Are they being made at the restaurant level or are they being made in a corporate office? And there are benefits to both, right? I think that, and I count myself among the people that do this. We have this proclivity to say, that's right or that's right, as opposed to recognizing the fact that they're both right in a way. And if you can gain enough experience approaching an idea from different perspectives and kind of collecting the things from each that resonate the most with you. That's generally when you figure out what right looks like for you. On the restaurant smart approach, what that means to me is that the highest paid people are working in the restaurant. They have agency, they have autonomy, they can think on their feet. The restaurant feels like a more genuine reflection of the people in the room, right? And listen, I've never met anyone who won't bring a more fully realized version of themselves to the work when they feel like they have a genuine hand in contributing to what the product they're serving actually is. On the corporate smart side, though, I mean, listen, if COVID taught us anything, right, it's that there's some pretty like significant fundamental issues to our business models that need to be addressed, along with some other issues. But on the corporate side, there's systems, there's controls, there's measures that make the restaurants better businesses. I believe that a leader's role in managing, whether it's a single restaurant or a portfolio of restaurants, is to figure out how to thread the needle and walk that very, very fine line between trust and control, between delegation and control. How do you give the people that work for you a true, genuine level of empowerment while also putting the right guardrails up to ensure certain amounts of consistency, certain amounts of profitability? And I think figuring out your personal balance between restaurant smart and corporate smart is one of the first steps towards figuring that out.
I mean, it makes like, it's funny, like reading the book, and listening to you talk, I read the book as if you were talking to me, which was kind of fun, to hear your words kind of come through that I read. You know, when you are looking at new team members and when you're looking to add, you know, what's some of the most important things that you look for in new team members? And, you know, I think you said something that resonated, you know, with our business, and I'm just going to throw it out there as a compliment because it really like helped us, you know, maybe sometimes it's not good to add if this person's really just going to, you know, bring you down, that sometimes it's maybe easier just to kind of work through what you have going on and just kind of wait for that right person. I'm sorry, go ahead. You can answer the question.
All right, what do I look for in people? You know, it took me a long time to get comfortable and confident interviewing people. I always felt like that, especially when you're a young manager, right? You're coming up and you're interviewing people and you're trying to impress everyone. Like when you're a young manager, you want people to think that you deserve the job. And one of the things I came to do as I grew in my career was everything in my power to convince young managers that that was not their role. Their role is not for people to think they're cool. Their role is not to think people think they deserve the job. Their role is not to impress people. The people that they're managing don't need another friend. They need a leader. They need to dictate what's cool, not try to fit into what other people think is cool, all that stuff. But when I was a young manager and I was interviewing people, I would always like come up with these specific interview questions that, I don't know, made me look smart or whatever. And eventually I just realized that the best interview technique was almost no technique at all. Again, like when you're interviewing someone, you're basically deciding that you're going to have a relationship with them. And no one ever goes on a first date with a list of questions that they plan to ask the person, right? Like, I believe that the best way to interview someone is just to get to know them. Are they someone with integrity? Do they have some of the same core values that you do? Are they excited by the things that your restaurant or your organization is pursuing? Are they someone you want to spend time with? Can you trust them? Because if they have all that stuff, as well as a good work ethic, there's not that much you can't teach them. And in fact, sometimes the less experience they have, the better they can be for your organization, because you're not having to unwind things that they've learned somewhere else that don't necessarily gel within your orbit. You can just start from scratch. But I'm saying, when I say there's no technique at all, you're just getting to know them, I'm not trying to be flippant about the process, because to your point, I think too many people say, I need to hire some people. And I think that word is the wrong word to use. What we should be doing is saying, I need to select some people. Because there are a few things that you can do that have more of an impact on your culture than hiring the right person or the wrong person. In the book, I say, like, a single individual can have an asymmetrical and outsized impact on the team in either direction, right? If you hire someone that cares, that's going to push, that brings the right energy, the right attitude, everyone around them gets better. If you hire the opposite of that person, everyone around them gets worse. One of the things I say in the book is, and this is true, I made the mistake enough times where I hired the wrong person because I was short-staffed and stressed out. And a few weeks later, I had to let go of them, and I was right back where I started. And I grew to embrace this perspective that I'd rather be short-staffed for another few weeks and find the right person. And I would say that to my team. I'd be like, I know everyone's working harder now than they want to. And I found someone, but if I hired them today, we'd all be right back where we are in a few weeks. I'm gonna wait a little bit longer. And this is for you guys as much as it is for me, because when you hire someone, they're not just a reflection of you. They're a reflection of everyone else on the team. I was talking to someone else who read the book just earlier today, and they were like, well, okay, that's easy advice in the before days, but right now, with everyone as short-staffed as they are, do you still stand by that advice? And I said, yeah, because I would sooner change the style of service in my restaurants such that I needed less people than hire the wrong person. Think about it like this. If you were to go to your local neighborhood restaurant, one where you always feel seen and cared for, and you feel a sense of belonging when you walk in, and everyone's great, and one of two things changed. The next time you walked in, you sat down, someone still came to your table, took your order, the entire step of service remained the same, but everyone was kind of terrible. Or you went back and everyone there was still just the kind of person you remember them being, but you have to go up to the bar and order your food and pick it up from the bar and bring it to the table yourself. Which of those options would you as a guest prefer? The latter, right? Like, because in the latter, people are prioritizing connection over service. And we all want to have good service. We all want to have good food. But those things, we're focusing on them only in service of connection. So hiring the wrong person to fill a role, if it comes at the expense of your culture and the connections you can establish internally and externally, I think it's the absolute wrong thing to do.
I think this is one of the, to my point I was to make earlier, this was one of the biggest things that I took away from the book, because we're going through it right now, and I think a lot of restaurants are going through it right now. Staffing is challenging, to say the least, but it was, we're gonna wait and find the right person, because we've had a revolving door of like these people that last like 2 months, 3 months. You spend so much time training, so much time investing in them, and then for them to, flake out, leave, whatever it is, I'd rather just wait. And yeah, we had this whole conversation. It was, me and my partner, our executive chef, and one of our sous chefs, and we just had to make that decision. And it was great to read that from the book and be able to take that, take that directly from the book. You say often that 30 minutes can transform a restaurant culture. How?
So it's interesting. Sometimes like you say things with like audacity, right? You like a one-liner with audacity to really like pique people's interest. And that's the best way to like actually get people to read what follows. But as audacious as that sounds, I really believe it. Here's the thing. Most restaurants do some sort of pre-service. It's how you spend that time that matters. There's plenty of restaurants where people get together and they maybe do it over family meal while people are distracted, and they run through, hey, we just put this new dish on the menu, or hey, like that vintage is expired. We ran out of that vintage. We're doing this vintage. Also, like, hey guys, when we call for hands in the kitchen, can we get back there more quickly? All right. Also, health insurance enrollments up next Tuesday. Great, have a good service. We'll see you. And when I see a restaurant doing pre-meal like that, I'm like, what a profound waste. For me, pre-meal, if thoughtfully and intentionally pursued, is the 30 minutes where the people that you work with cease being a collection of individuals and come together as a team. And they need to be a team in order to do what we're all trying to do the moment you open the doors to the public. There's a reason why in any given Sunday, Pacino's locker room speech is what it is, or Braveheart does this, right? Everyone's getting aligned, and the coach is saying, like, hey, this is why we're here. This is the opportunity we've been given. Here's the reality. A culture becomes what you spend time talking about. And if every single day before you open, you get your team together, you stand in a circle, not during family meal, do it in a time where everyone's fully focused. When the side work is done, the dining room is set, everyone's in a circle together. And you run through what dishes change, all that nonsense. And it's nonsense in the grand scheme of things. And then you spend the rest of the time talking about the things that you want the culture to care about. And you do it with passion, and you do it with zest, and all that stuff. And you invite the team to be a part of it. For years, I did every single pre-meal twice a day, before lunch and before dinner. Because that was the time that I could dictate the conversation. That's when I could make it cool to care. That's when I could remind the team that I believed with every ounce of my being that the work we were doing mattered, the impact we could have on people around us. That's when you can celebrate the people that are succeeding and show others like the beautiful ramifications of affirmation, or share stories of things that happened to you outside of work and how they made you feel. Give the people on your team the opportunity to do the same thing. I believe that words matter. And I believe that a team getting together and talking about the things that it wants to believe in, it manifests to the point where suddenly that team embodies those same things. There's a quote in the book from Jay-Z's book that you can talk things into existence. You need to spend time talking about the things that you want to stand for in order to stand for them.
It's no wonder that in the early days of the IRC, when we were on these leadership calls, almost on like a daily basis, you had a way of speaking, and I see it now, and reading it in the book was, again, it just kind of comes through. You have this ability to, like, I'm talking to you, like, I'm willing to run through a wall for you. Like, it's a really remarkable quality, and it's definitely like a quality of a leader. We have managers. I mean, there's operators out there, that are trying to become this and trying to get to that point. And I guess, what tips do you have for managers who are dealing with these staffing shortages, and how they can kind of like put aside that time for that 30 minutes of pre-service, or even put aside the time to plan for that 30 minutes of pre-service? Because I don't think you just went in there and, maybe every once in a while you shot from the hip, but I feel like a lot of times, like, you were planning these things. This wasn't just off the cuff.
No, and nor should it be off the cuff. Although, okay, I'm gonna answer that in a few different ways. I think the first thing is deciding that it matters to you. Because as humans, we have a tremendous ability to always find time to do the things that we decide matter, right? Like, I don't care how busy you are, you find the time to brush your teeth. Hopefully, most people. Like, it's not a question of if there is enough time. That's just something you do. It's about setting up a practice. We always find time to do the things that matter to us. And so that's one. Two, you have to make it a practice. I think you put systems behind these things to make sure that it works. So for me, when I would prepare for those things, I would always do it on my way to work. I wouldn't scroll through Instagram. I wouldn't check emails. It was rote that was the time that I spent time thinking about what I wanted to say in the meeting. I didn't write stuff down. It wasn't that. Oftentimes preparation is just giving yourself the space to decide what you want to accomplish and then going and doing it. Depending on the person, some people might want to write stuff down, but as long as you're not just walking into the circle and then deciding what do you want to talk about in that moment, you're doing well. But third, as it pertains to how do you free up that much time for your team or any of this thing, one of the things we used to talk about is slow down to speed up. You need to take a breath to look around you to see what you need to focus on more efficiently such that you can accomplish more. I would always rather remove a few steps of service, remove some side work, try to do a few less things to make sure that we always had that time, because I believed we would do everything else that we needed to do at a much higher level, ultimately more efficiently. And pretty soon you're back to doing everything plus that time with your team. Let me make sure I said that concisely enough. If it's important to you, you'll do it. Make it a practice. Figure out when and where you're going to do something and just do it then and there every single day. And remove stuff from your to-do list to make sure that you have time and space to do the things that matter the most.
I mean, I think that's as concise as it can be, and that's great advice, especially for I think new managers, new owners. You know, it's stuff that I think you don't realize until you're in it, that you need to, that this is how you have to build the culture. This is how you have to build your team. Speaking of building your culture and building your team, one of the biggest, like most, I think, prevailing things that went through the entire book is intention. And it's something that after I read the book, like we started taking a look at like how we intentionally do things and how we try to affect the experience. Can you speak a little bit about intention and its importance, especially when it came to EMP?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, listen, every one of us is intentional about certain things. We're intentional about the things we are inherently the most passionate about. So if you're into design, right, you're going to be very intentional about exactly what art is on your wall and how it's hung. Or if you're into music, you're going to be super intentional about the playlist in your restaurant, or you know, on and on and on and on. If you're a chef and you're really excited about the new lobster dish you're putting in the menu, you're going to be very intentional about every detail that goes into that plate. The whole book, my entire thesis, is just that we should all be much more intentional about how we pursue relationships. Because of anything that you could be intentional in pursuit of, that is one of the most scalable in the impact that it can have. Because life is a labyrinth of relationships. If restaurants are about connection, connection is about relationships. But the hard part is, with relationships, it's not so clear, right? You can't see the relationships hanging on the wall like you can with the art. You can't hear the relationships playing over the speakers in your restaurant like you can the music playlist you put together. You can't taste the relationships like you can that lobster dish. There's this quote by some famous economist that says, what gets measured gets managed. The whole idea is like when you talk about financial instruments, like or financials in a restaurant, if you can very clearly manage the return on investment of something, you spend more time managing that thing than you can the thing that's more difficult to manage or to measure. Relationships, it's hard to measure the return, but that doesn't mean it matters less. In fact, I believe it matters more. And so the reason intentionality comes up so much in the book is because in the absence of being able to see it or hear it or taste it, with the acknowledgement that it's harder to measure, you need to be more intentional about being intentional in pursuit of relationships. Like you need to decide, again, to my point about 30 minutes a day, that it's important enough to you to be unreasonable in your pursuit of it, to do whatever it takes, to go to whatever lengths, to be the best version of yourself in pursuit of it.
Was this something that your, I guess like your upbringing or your relationship with your father showed you, or is this something that was kind of like a little bit further down the road? Because I mean, it's just such a unique take on, I think where our industry is going.
It's so funny. Like, I think when you look back in life, it's hard to pinpoint where you learned something or when you learned it. And as I get older, I'm coming to realize that most of the things I believe in, it's been like an amalgamation of experiences that has gotten me to that point. I mean, my mother got sick when I was a kid and ended up becoming a quadriplegic. You know that, you've read the book. And my dad had to, work restaurant hours and be a dad and take care of her. Intentionality wasn't a luxury for him, it was a requirement. In order to literally just do all of that stuff within a 24-hour day on a daily basis, he needed to be very intentional with how he spent his time. Only doing the things that mattered to him, not wasting time doing the things that didn't. I got to be on the receiving end of that intentionality as his son, for whom he played the role of father and mother. And I also got to be on the delivering end of that intentionality because I had to take care of my mom a lot as well. She became a quadriplegic. He was at work. When I was home, it was a team effort. Because as a kid, I was like basically the thing that she lived for. And whatever, you're in like junior high and high school, it's very easy to forget to give the time to your mother, not just feeding her and doing all the stuff and taking care of her, but also to just pursue her.
Yeah.
I had to be intentional to make sure that I didn't stop doing that, because I found myself inclined to check off the list what I needed to do to take care of her, and then run upstairs and go play music with my friends or Nintendo or go out to my friend's house, but I'll tell you what, when I did take the time to pursue her and I saw that smile take over her entire face, and I recognized how good that made me feel, it became pretty easy to be intentional. Like, one of the things I talk a lot about in the book, people say you can't train hospitality. I believe you can. I most certainly believe you can encourage it. Because the first time, even if you need to trick someone on your team into doing something really kind for someone else, because they're not otherwise inclined to do so on their own, and they see the complete look of absolute joy on that person's face when they receive a gift that they were responsible for giving them, it becomes the most beautiful addiction. And it's the only addiction I know of where every single stakeholder in the entire thing benefits as a result of it.
It's first off, thanks for sharing all that, because that's incredibly personal, and I know you shared it in the book, but it's one thing to write it on a piece of paper. It's another thing to say it out loud. So thanks. It's an incredible story. You talk about these Dreamweaver experiences, these things, and again, I'm gonna go back to it. No one did anything like this. Like, I think you talk about this in the book too, where we'll go to a restaurant, or I'll go to a friend's restaurant, I'll get an extra course of food, or I'll get a glass of champagne, something very simple. But what you guys did was you guys went beyond that. I had a friend who was from New England. He was a chef in Chicago. He's from New England, but went to 11 Madison Park, and you guys made him a clam boil. Like, it was off completely different, but it blew his mind. Like, it sent him into another place. And I remember him coming back, and this is also like a little pre-Instagram internet. I know the kids don't understand what this was like beforehand. Restaurants in other cities, and then talk about it with each other, and like you would look at menus over. But I remember him talking about this, and we all thought it was like, whoa, what's this place doing? This place is doing something totally different. What advice do you have for operators that want to include something like this Dreamweaver experience? Like how to intro it, add it. I mean, is this a line item in a P&L? Is this something? I mean, how do you do this?
So, the Dreamweaver, for people who don't know what that is, there was a lunch service. I'll tell this story just to get everyone current, where I was in the dining room helping out the team in a busier than normal lunch service, and I was clearing appetizers from a table of 4 foodies who were on vacation to New York on their way to the airport to go back home after their lunch. And I overheard them talking, and they were like going on about the trip, and they had loved the trip. They'd been to the Bernardin and Danielle and Persay and Momofuku, and now they were at 11 Madison Park, their last meal before heading home. And then one of them jumped in and said, yeah, but the only thing I haven't had is a New York City hot dog. Which is iconic. You should have a New York City hot dog if you're traveling to New York. And it was one of those light bulb moments. I literally like walked as calmly as I could back to the kitchen, dropped off the plates, ran outside to the street cart, got a hot dog, went back inside, somehow convinced the chef to serve it. And we cut it up into 4 perfect pieces, add a swish of ketchup, a swish of mustard, a little cannelle of sauerkraut and relish. And before their dry aged Muscovy duck course, I dropped off. I said, to make sure you don't go home with any culinary regrets, New York City hot dog. And they freaked out. I had never seen anyone react to anything I'd served them the way they reacted to that hot dog. Athletes always go to the tape when they've had a bad game to see what they could do better. Not often enough do we collectively go to the tapes when we've had a good game or a good service to see what we did well, to make sure that we continue doing that thing. And there was something about that moment where I was like, we are on, that was something. What happened to make it happen? And I like kind of started to break it down in my head. It was being present, right? Which is way overused these days. But for me, being present just means caring so much about the person you're with that you stop caring about everything else. Being present is what allowed me to pick up the cue on the hot dog. 2 was take what you do seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. I think way too often in restaurants, especially, we let like these brands that we're trying to perfectly curate stand in the way of us actually giving people the things that will make them happy. A hot dog in a 4-star restaurant is sacrilegious. But all you need to look at is how it made them feel to understand that it was the right thing to do. And 3rd, like if what you're really trying to do is make people feel seen, one size fits one. I could have given them a bottle of vintage Krug and a bucket of caviar. It wouldn't have made them feel the same way that the $2 hot dog did. So I started talking about it constantly with the team, and we started like doing these little things in the dining room. But ultimately, I mean, there's not like a bench in the kitchen with a bunch of people sitting on it waiting to go run an errand in the middle of service. And so we were limited by our lack of resources. And this is the thing. Plenty of people have good ideas. They talk to their team about doing something amazing, but they don't invest in the resources to bring that thing to life. And so I added a position whose only responsibility was to help other people bring their ideas to life. And we called it the Dreamweaver. And then we just empowered the team. We said, hey, this person, their responsibility is to bring your ideas to life. Go out and find ideas and work with her to make it happen. We didn't overanalyze and have like a crazy approval process. And the stuff that happened was amazing. A guest told us that his dad was more Budweiser and steak than Sauterne and foie gras. So the Dreamweavers went around to all the bodegas in the neighborhood and bought all the bottles of Bud they could, every single type of Bud, and made the champagne card a Budweiser card. A guest was lamenting out loud that he was on his way back to LA after dinner and didn't get his daughter her I Love New York stuffed animal. So the Dreamweavers literally took kitchen towels and sewed a stuffed animal for the person. Like, so like a complete 11 Madison Park stuffed animal. I've gotten to know that guy since he decided to keep it for himself. He never gave it to his daughter. And this is what happened. And I'll back up and actually answer your question in a moment. The guests were obviously happier than ever before, but so was our team. Because for the first time, they weren't just executing someone else's vision, serving plates of food that someone else had created. They were able to come up with their own ideas, and those ideas were directly impacting the experience. We had taken salespeople and turned them into product designers. They were working so much harder because they felt true ownership over the experience they were serving. And we were all happier because every single night we were making other people really happy. One of the things that's so hard in the restaurant business is keeping our gas tanks filled. I like to say that in hospitality, we're constantly pouring water out of our pitchers into other people's glasses. And you run out of water really quickly, unless you figure out how to systemize a way that it stays full, and graciousness towards others automatically refills your pitcher. Now, did we have a budget line item? Yeah, we had money that we set aside for dream weaving. And people say, well, you could do it. You were an expensive restaurant. You guys were doing great. Well, A, when we started it, we weren't who we ended up being, as a note. B, the hot dog cost $2. But C, it's not dissimilar to the answer I gave you about 30 minutes a day. You can afford the thing that you decide is important to you. And maybe you need to not get some other stuff that you were ordinarily getting in order to afford it. But the return on it is exponential. Because every table you do one of those things for, I can promise you two things. One, they're going to be a customer for life. And B, they're going to tell the story of that experience 100 times more often than they'll ever tell a story about any dish you could ever serve them. And that is the best marketing and PR you could ever ask for.
I mean, I just proved that to you. This is a story. Yeah. Literally, the guy, I think he ate there in 2010 or 12. I mean, we're talking 10, 12 years ago, and yet I'm still retelling this story back to you. Yes. So you're 100% correct. In your answer to that question, you talked about refilling your pitcher. You actually just posted about this, I think, on Instagram.
Yeah.
I do creepily follow you. How do you suggest someone with a family? Being you have a family, where do you find that? How do you find that time to refill? Where's that work-life balance? Where's it come from? Like, how do you do it?
Well, I think, okay, so I'm talking about how like those acts in the restaurant help keep the pitcher full, right? But in addition to that, we all need like the thing outside of work, and honestly outside of our families, to keep our gas tanks full. I think step one is just figuring out what the thing is for you. I think way too often people never give themselves the space to figure out what is the thing that fills their tank. And by the way, like, there's no right or wrong thing. My wife loves going on a long walk or run alone. That fills her gas tank. I love, and I don't get to do it nearly as much as I used to when I was single, now that I have kids, but like once in a while, I like to order Chinese food and have a bottle of wine alone watching TV on the couch. Like, that fills me up. Like, that re-energizes me. And so I think step one is just figuring out what is your thing. What's your oxygen? And then just recognizing that it's not a display of weakness to tell the people around you that you need some time to do it.
Yeah.
If you can like build the right relationships around you to be like, hey, I'm always going, I'm always pushing, I'm always supporting. I need some, I mean, it sounds cheesy. I need some me time, right? Like, and that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, you're such a great person to come to for advice. I mean, it's great having this conversation with you. I feel like the book is just an extension of that conversation, but who do you go to for advice?
So I think that's super important, right? Like, you are never too young to be a mentor, and you're never too old to have a mentor. So you're never too young to be one, for anyone out there that thinks they are, because, well, A, people need it, and anyone can serve in that role, and B, the best way to learn is to teach, and sometimes just starting to play that role for someone else will make you a better person. And you're never too old for it, because we all get to a certain point in our lives or in the hierarchy of our companies where there's no one left above us whose responsibility it is to fill our gas tanks. And so sometimes you need to go out there and just say, hey, I need you to be my mentor. And as long as you are close enough with the person and they have the bandwidth to do it, I think it can be a really virtuous relationship. My dad still plays that role for me.
That's awesome.
I've also always prioritized holding on to my friends from growing up. And my closest friends today, to this day, are guys I met from preschool through freshman year of college. There's 7 of us, and you talk about being intentional in pursuit of a relationship. We are all in constant pursuit of one another's friendships, because we've decided that no matter how busy we get as individuals, that's not something we're willing to lose. And that's
I'm sorry, are they in restaurants too? I mean, I have a very similar, I grew up with the same group of like 4 or 5 guys with my brother. Same thing. None of them work in restaurants. Do these guys work in restaurants?
No.
It's so weird. It's so weird. I have that same thing. It's good to hear somebody else has that same story. I thought my wife thinks I'm a weirdo that I still have friends from, like, I have one of my best friends I've known since I was 3.
No. Well, maybe if being a weirdo means you're unique, yeah, no, we are unique. Not many people have those kind of relationships, but yeah. I think we're lucky, because I've found that, like, having people that have been in your life for a really long time, that you've walked through many, many seasons with, like, lend a consistent perspective to how you process through things that's hard to replace. And anyone who's listening to this that doesn't mean it's too late. Just hold on to the people that you have now and don't let them go.
I always find it's really interesting. These are the people, sometimes when I get too big for my britches, these are the people that knock me down the best.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like, they don't care.
Yeah, they don't care. And by the way, they also don't care when things are not going great. And they're the ones that will be there with you no matter what. Yeah.
So I have time for like one more question, and it's gonna be a little 2-parter. And it goes back to your time at Cornell. I think so you were in charge. They would, part of your dining room class, you guys would bring in guest chefs, and you were in charge of Daniel Boulud's guest chef appearance. And you tell the story, about how, like, they went back to your house, you guys had a keg. One, would you answer if Daniel Boulud did do a keg stand? Second part of this question is, what is it like to eat truffles and scrambled eggs from one of the best chefs in the world, made for you in a kitchen, probably not the best kitchen in the world, at an age when, man, did you really appreciate it? Also, from what I've heard, this is not totally unique that he tends to do this. It's just kind of like the guy he is. I've heard this story from a couple other people. Like, that's who he is.
I mean, so if you scroll deep enough in my Instagram, there's actually photographic evidence of him with me that night. One of my college buddies found a picture, and I took a picture of it and posted it a while back. So the answer to that first question is yes, that did happen. Man, I think Daniel Boulud is, talking about mentors, I think a mentor is just someone who exhibits a behavior that you want to emulate. And how Daniel Boulud has consistently never let his success allow him to stop investing in others is something I want to emulate. I was a nothing college kid, and he made me feel like the most important person in the world, and has consistently played that role for me in the years since. And I just think Danielle Boulud is one of the most warm, gracious, hospitable people, not only in our industry, but that I've ever met in my entire life.
That's awesome. I lied. I'm still going to ask another couple questions. There's like little bits of stuff that there's stuff that I know that other people want to know about, and I think one of the questions that we got was, do you have any like plans to open up another restaurant? Is there anything in the works?
So I was a week away from signing 3 restaurant leases in New York City when COVID started. One of them was completely designed. And they were all gonna be really, really cool. I was excited about it. And then COVID started, IRC happened, time got kind of intense, and I decided to let those go, focus on the other stuff, and give myself the ability. Here's the thing, when I sold my company, it was I wasn't sure who I was without it. And I was frantically putting together a team and raising a bunch of money and going to open restaurants just because I felt a lack of identity without them. COVID gave me the ability to actually take the time to recognize whether that was something I wanted to do, as opposed to going back to doing the thing I'd always done. I really like living up in the country. I've been inspired by Blackberry Farm my entire career. I think what they create down there is amazing. I always talk about creating a magical world in a world that needs more magic, and I think they do it better than anyone. And my dream is to one day have my version of something like that up in the Hudson Valley. And that's what I'm trying to figure out.
That sounds terrible. No, I mean, it sounds amazing. It sounds like, I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? I mean, I think looking at it, from a chef's perspective, I love the idea of having some place like that. Like me and my business partner who grows a lot of stuff, he's definitely a green thumb. We talk about it all the time, and it's definitely something that it just sounds beautiful. It sounds like a beautiful way to live. So you're married to one of the best pastry chefs in the country. I think it's easy to say. I mean, we've all so before you could mail order crack pies and such, we would have friends that would go to New York City, and then we would have them pack them in bags, like 8-hour, 12-hour-old crack pie that sat in somebody's bag as it got shipped across the country. But how do you? So what's your favorite dessert that she does? And then are you a compost cookie guy or a confetti cookie guy?
I'm a corn cookie guy.
Oh, okay.
I love her corn cookies. I've had to become very disciplined about not eating too many of her things, because literally during COVID, I normally weigh like 180, 185. During COVID, I looked down and I got on a scale, it was 206. And I was like, okay. So I had to lose all the weight and really start to change things up a little bit. The thing that she's doing right now that's most dangerous for me is she's selling ice cream, like pints of ice cream in grocery stores. And there's always tons of it in our house, right? Because she's always tasting and testing. And the peanut butter crush ice cream that Milk Bar sells now, I can't open a pint without eating the entire pint, and it's becoming a problem. And so man, she's great. Honestly, you talk about mentorship and who plays that role for me now. I mean, she's my favorite co-conspirator, my favorite thought partner. She's awesome.
No, that's the way it should be. I've been married it'll be 15 years.
Oh, congratulations, man.
I know, it's crazy, but I was lucky enough to marry not only, my best friend, but probably the person that centers me and makes me the most, I think, true to my person, who I am. Well, look, Will, this is a great conversation. I could sit here talking to you all day. You're an incredible person. The book is just fantastic. The book literally reads like you talk. And I think that's what makes it so enjoyable and so easy to kind of, it really is an easy read. Like it's a super quick, fast read. And I loved it, to the point we're buying them for the managers here. So,
Oh, dude, thank you. That's
no,
really,
it really is. It's great. It really is. And I think there's bits in there for everybody. And it's not just restaurants. I really think that there's lessons in here that translate to almost any service industry, job. I mean, any of them. Like it really kind of goes across. So I want to encourage everybody out there, get out there, order this book. It's available at your favorite bookstore. It's available online. And again, thanks for being here. Next month, join John Schumacher for a conversation with Steve Palmer, author of Say Grace. Steve's book addresses how commonplace addiction in the food and beverage industry, how far an individual can push the boundaries of excess, and how one man found his way to sobriety. Whether you're staring down your own demons, know someone who is, or want to learn more about how our industry can save those that we enable, take a look inside Say Grace and join us next month for what promises to be an inspiring conversation. Thanks again. I can't wait to see what you have coming up next.
dude, thank you for the amazing conversation. Thank you all for listening. Go IRC.